week in racing. It's time to recap it. And who better to do it than Michael and Magic? Two bros/pros who cover the highs and lows of racing around the globe on every one of their shows. Real fans look forward to these guys and their last thoughts, cause they know they're not talking out of their royal ascot. What they say makes sense. So ladies and gents, sit back and relax as Blinkers Off presents The Magic Mike Show, where you hear the experts speak. The Magic Mike Show. Tune into the show every week. The Magic Mike Show. You can trust the show is the bomb because it's being brought to you by RacingDudes.com.
What's up, everybody? I'm Magic.
And I'm Mike.
And this is the Magic Mike Show, coming to you live on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube. We are here for you. Thank you so much for joining us live on a Monday. Mr. Samich, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. I am doing good. It was a fun weekend of racing, some ups and some downs, but all in all, it was nice to have Keeneland back. We got to see a bunch of stars again this weekend, and the countdown is officially on to the Spa. So it's, I'm excited. I love this time of year, so excited to have more good racing this weekend.
I got in all my fun yesterday because I know that this is going to be shaping up with Saratoga coming up, which is exciting, but that just means we are, just pouring gasoline on this fire of summer racing. It's already condensed and compact, but man, we've had some great racing lately, and I know we had a lot of great action at Keeneland that we're going to talk about and discuss the things that we learned from Keeneland, from Del Mar. You had the closing day for Belmont Park, so you kind of wrap things up before we head to Saratoga. Before we get into it, man, what's the best thing you saw this weekend?
Well, I got two of them. First off, I want to give props to Del Mar and Saratoga, which both have PPs up for this weekend already. So you can already get, I think it's Thursday, Friday at Saratoga, and Friday, Saturday at Del Mar, which is freaking awesome for someone like me on a Monday because it gives you the ability to actually go through a card once or twice before like Thursday afternoon. So I really appreciate it when tracks get up. Hopefully the whole season we get this, where it's like we have the full weekend by Wednesday, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. But the best thing I saw was actually Larry Colmus at Del Mar. Like, I didn't even realize how much this would like rattle my cage when I started hearing that voice again. And it's funny because I've heard him at Saratoga so many times, and I have some very good and some very bad memories of calls down the stretch that have gone one way or the other. But man, it was cool to hear him back on the mic, and it was interesting to do it like without Trevor Denman there, having Colmus there, but at Del Mar, not Saratoga. It was just kind of this weird merging of the worlds. But man, it was nice to have Del Mar back. I just love watching that track. Excited to talk about that track this week and this show too, because I feel like the tracks were playing very different than what I normally see. And so I think it's really interesting to kind of what we learned at Del Mar is what type of horses you should be looking for after one weekend, because they definitely are not what I would have assumed going into it. So looking forward to talking about that. But man, it was just great to hear Colmus on the mic, and it was interesting to hear him at Del Mar and kind of have those rushing emotions of Saratoga going through my head, but it not even being Saratoga because of that voice.
Yeah, it was a little different for me. I've only been racing for a few years, so I'm not the type of person who's just automatically expects Trevor Denman every time Del Mar's on. And so hearing Larry Colmus, it was a little weird at first, but I honestly, about race 3 or 4 on Friday, I was like, all right, this is fine, because
I'm fine,
because Larry calls enough big races and has since I've been following racing that for me, it's a big deal that Del Mar's back, and this was especially Friday was opening day for their summer meet. So for me, it was like, okay, Larry Colmus is calling what I perceive are big races. Now they're maiden 20 claimers, but at Del Mar, maybe not that big of a deal, but it was still cool. And honestly, man, I loved Del Mar this weekend. I didn't hit any of like the big tickets that I put out. I almost cashed for something really huge on Friday and spent. I did my best impression of the opening day ravelry that happens at Del Mar by puking in a planter the second half of the card because I was so sick at that beat in the stretch. You had that horse, by the way, that knocked me out of that early pick 5. Congrats! But that was overall. I felt like I was really seeing my shot better than I was at Santa Anita, which is weird because Santa Anita had 2 months to prepare. Del Mar opening weekend, I'm like, all right. I feel good. I had a couple of really nice prices, what I thought were very fair prices on horses that when I pressed my opinions, I had a pretty profitable Del Mar weekend, all things considered. So I'm with you. It was nice to have it back.
Yeah, the payouts were amazing at Del Mar all weekend. I mean, the pick 4s and pick 5s kept bringing back bigger numbers than what you'd necessarily expect in win parlays. That the early one you're talking about, we were both alive to the early pick 4 and pick 5 on Friday. I had a free grid out, and Magic put out his Magic Missiles on Twitter, and I was fortunate enough to hit. We both had the horse that really looked like it was going to win, turning for home. But that would have paid $2,000 to that horse, and it ended up paying $4,500 to the horse horse that caught him. And so, it's always nice when you give out a free $4,500 ticket on Twitter, but it's one of those things where that sequence wasn't that hard to get to. Like, it really wasn't. And even onto Sunday, when I put out the bombs, I had 2 singles in the early 5 races, and I thought they were both fairly logical singles, and they both ended up going off between 3 and 4 to 1. I mean, you're getting decent prices on them, and unfortunately, in both cases, the 2-year-old screwed me to bust me out of the tickets. But at least you're live to good payouts because of the horses that are winning. I mean, we had I think it was like a $3 ticket live to about $2,500 on Sunday into race 5, and it's just unfortunate. Same thing at Keeneland too. I mean, we gave out the first pick 5 of the meet on Wednesday afternoon on a free grid, and then we're just like, oh man, we were like the Matrix dodging those pick 5s the rest of the time. You would not believe we didn't hit one, and then we hit the last one of the meet. So hopefully, we don't wait until the last race of the meet to hit a pick 5 again at Del Mar, because that would be a painful month if that happens.
Or Saratoga, yeah. Those are both 2 places you don't want to. It's okay if it's a 5-day meet. You wait until the last. You hit the first one. You wait until the last day to hit that one. That's fine. That's not nearly as much damage you could do at Del Mar. I'll stay with the theme of Del Mar is the best thing that I saw, specifically on Sunday. There was in the opener, and I don't remember your bomb, so I apologize in advance if the opener is what screwed you over.
No, I had that one.
You did? Okay.
Yeah,
so
race 5 payout leg was my kryptonite all weekend.
Oh, that's right. Now I know what you're talking about. Okay, so in the opener at Del Mar on Sunday, it was 2-year-old Calbreds. And there were a couple of horses there that looked pretty good on paper. And there was Mike McCarthy training. It was getting a lot of steam, even way early in the betting. And I kept looking at it and go, I don't think this horse is that good. I mean, this isn't a great field. These are Calbred 2-year-olds, most of them unraced. But there was a Peter Miller horse. I was like, the horse almost went 46 flat out of the gate in his last work as an unraced 2-year-old. I mean, you see any horse do that, especially for a sprint. You're like, I got to use that horse. But I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And I went through the rest of the ticket structure, and I was like, I've got to single this. And at first I was like, this is something I would never have done before, which is have the confidence in singling an unraced 2-year-old at Del Mar. Like and it's not a Bob Baffert horse, and it's definitely not going to be the favorite. And so I kept thinking we were going to get favorite price on him, and ended up going off at 3 to 1. And I played him straight to win and cashed pretty well. But I got a lot of our followers messaging me saying, because you said this could be a potential freak, which for a Calbred 2-year-old, I would say that was a pretty freakish performance for him.
It widens the net a little bit.
Yeah. But I had a lot of people reach out and say, thanks, I hit this because you said it. Or Paul in our fantasy league, Free Beer, said, is it literally just because you said it? He said, I didn't look at the form, I didn't look at PPs. I just saw it was that, and you said this horse could be good, and so I played it. And so I was able to make people money. So it's not just that I profited this weekend, but I had people coming from out of the woodwork saying, hey, you singled that 5, and that gave me the confidence. Or, some people like Ice Paddle was like, oh, I added that to the ticket because you liked it so much. So it's really great when you can see that sort of thing happening. And someone even reached out and was like, thanks to you guys, I'm learning from things. And I just responded back. That's exactly what Mike and I try to do every time.
Yeah, that's what we're here for, man. Now you got to watch out. You're starting to get some street cred. Now you just wait until you get cold. That's when it's tough. But yeah, no, it's always
that was
fun.
Called Santa Anita, is what that was.
It's always fun when people make money off that kind of stuff. I mean, that's like you said, we love to. And one of the reasons why we started doing these live shows is we love to answer questions. And if you want to ask why we like a horse, why we don't like a horse, things like that. I mean, that's a big part of why we want to do this for people, so that they can hopefully get better and be more confident in their opinions and start understanding why we play horses and why we take angles. And I think that the one you brought up is a great point. Just to kind of piggyback on top of what you said there, I often talk about separator legs and pick 4 and pick 5s. 2-year-olds is one of the best places to have separator legs because people are scared to single 2-year-olds. So it's one of the least likely singled horses, unless it's a quote unquote like Bob Baffert freak horse, like you mentioned. You even said it without even thinking about it. Well, it's not a Baffert horse I was singling to. If you single to 2-year-olds, you're going to be able to spread in other legs where people will not, because most often people will not single 2-year-olds. So if you start to notice trends, and we talked about like Mendez and Fuentes up at Santa Anita when it was those 2-year-old 4.5 furlong races, that was a great trend. Now that we're going a little longer, I'm kind of going to be fading that a little bit more because I don't think the Del Mar form, I think you're going to see better horses debuting at Del Mar than you did at Santa Anita. So I think it's going to be tough for Mendez to keep that up. But when you see, a Miller horse who just blew out in 46, it's got Cedillo up, that's an attractive horse to single, especially, and this is another thing that I'd like to focus on here. A lot of times people gravitate to horses with one race under them. I almost see that as a negative now. A lot of people want to debut and win at Del Mar. As weird as that sounds, it's a mental thing. They want to win and debut at Del Mar. And so a lot of times the better horses will not have debuted at both Del Mar or Saratoga or will be debuting for the first time at Del Mar, Saratoga. They didn't want to run their first race at Belmont or at Santa Anita. So I'm almost going to lean toward first-time starters early in the meet and then second-time starters over the course later in the meet.
It's one of you bring up a great point, and it's almost to give people insight into, if you care about it, the fantasy league that we're in. Mike and I, part of our draft strategy coming into this current league that we're in, was looking at where were horses debuting, because I don't think that's something that we, for fantasy purposes, really considered. But if you look at the horses that were doing well and getting a lot of points, they might not have won at Saratoga or Del Mar, but that's where like the prime horses are always safe for. And I know, Mike, you've talked about it a lot before. If you see that a horse that they did try debuting a horse at Saratoga and maybe ran 7th or 8th in its debut, you give them a few races, man, and they drop down to a lower level or face lesser competition, a smaller circuit. It's like you need to give that horse a lot of contention, because even though he was 7th at Saratoga, it's like being a New York 5, but you're like a Missouri 9 kind of a thing, right? Like you really got to bump it up there.
Well, that is a good example. We talk about class and the class between racetracks. You know, the maiden special weight level is not created equal. Let's just put it that way. A maiden special weight at Saratoga or Del Mar or Keeneland, I don't want to leave Keeneland off the list, is comparable to like almost a low-level allowance in some cases at smaller tracks. I mean, it is crazy how deep these fields are. And when you look back at some of the races at Saratoga, and I'm going to talk about Saratoga because that's what I know more, you have a couple of these like maiden special weight races, and you're like, how the heck were all 4 of these horses in this race? And it ends up to be horses that are all Breeders' Cup horses at different levels. I mean, it's absolutely amazing the depth that you can sometimes get in those races. And I know Del Mar's the same way. I think it was Chrome and Arrogate or someone. There were 2 like famous ones that were in a Los Al, a maiden special weight together.
Arrogate and Accelerate.
There it is. So every now and then you have these races that just produce these incredible horses, and obviously that's a Los Alamitos example, and we're pushing Del Mar and Saratoga here, but that does happen in California, specifically at those 2 major tracks, or specifically at Del Mar and Saratoga in New York, quite a bit.
And one last thing before we get into it, the fact that Del Mar had an early pick 5 sequence that we both thought was logical, and neither one of us hit it. But the fact that we were like, yeah, you could have gotten to those horses, paid almost $4,900 when you were getting $49 pick 5 sequences at Santa Anita. Like,
we hit the early Friday one.
What's that?
We had the early Friday one.
I'm talking about Sunday.
Oh no,
Sunday's paid $4,900.
Yeah, I didn't have that one.
But still, like the prices just in general are so much better at Del Mar, and it's like, and you and I are both going, yeah, we didn't hit, or we did hit, but you could see it happening either way. It's just, it's so beautiful.
Well, one of the reasons why I don't love stakes racing as much as I like the lower levels is stakes racing is, for lack of a better term, more predictable, and when the favorites win, it pays so much less because you have just monster horse. Like, look, Rushing Fall is a great example. Right? We're going to talk about Rushing Fall later. She was awesome. I was trying to beat her. You know why I was trying to beat her? Because everyone had her. And, you know, if you string a couple of these horses together, all of a sudden it's just like, you can't make any money unless you absolutely hammer those horses and you have a really strong opinion on all of them. And I try to go the other way usually. And so for me, I'm looking to beat those type of horses. And in stakes races, it seems like often you see in those smaller fields of stakes races, you're going to get the best horse home. Whereas, you know, when you have a 6-horse, 7-horse maiden special rate, it's much more likely that the race is misbet. For instance, I could make an argument that the Del Mar race in the first race, we had the wrong favorite, that the public was betting the wrong horse but you're not misbetting Rushing Fall. She's going to go off as the favorite no matter where she runs, and she's probably the most likely horse to win. So you get more, I think you have just a better chance of finding betting mistakes or the market mistakes when you're facing maiden special weight claiming allowance versus when you're facing stakes spread races.
Makes perfect sense. And like Mike alluded to, we're going to talk about Rushing Fall and all the other action from Keeneland this weekend, another edition of What We Learned. So get ready, bring your questions. If you're watching live, throw them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them as we go. You ready, Mr. Samich?
Well, let's roll.
Riders up. Hang on. Give me 1 second. I accidentally closed out of the race we were supposed to talk about.
Oh, magic.
Getting to see how the sausage is made.
Yeah, well, let's get a little more editing action in there.
All right, the first race we're going to look at, we're going to Keeneland on Saturday, July 11th, and this is the Grade 2 $600,000 Toyota Bluegrass Stakes. Kentucky Derby points on the line here. 100 points to the winner, 40, 20, 10 to second, third, and fourth place. Field of 13, Swiss Skydiver is the lone filly in here. It was exciting that she showed up. It was exciting that she actually didn't completely embarrass herself, but she gets second. They say that she's going to go to the Kentucky Oaks back after this. Art Collector, man, this horse is undefeated in 2020. strong effort from this horse. I was really impressed watching back a day later. What did you think?
I thought our collector looked really good here. I think you have to move him up into the top 10. I would still have him outside of my top 5 at this point. Mainly because there really was not a lot in this race. So you got to try to figure out where you slot him in there. And Keeneland's also a little bit of a finicky track, so I generally don't overrate. And this is the same thing with like Maxfield, where I didn't overrate that win that he had as a 2-year-old, and I kept that down lower than a lot of people just because you get some interesting results at Keeneland every now and then. But our collector looked really, really good here. I mean, he did everything that you'd want him to do. He was close enough to the pace that he wasn't being left behind, was able to just get the lead and just open up late. And really, Swiss Skydiver never really had a chance at winning. She ran a very good race, but she never was going to beat our collector. So you got to respect our collector. 103 buyer. That's a big number coming back for him. But like I said, this is one of those performances where I'm going to slot him into the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th type range. I would still rather take some Bafferts, Honor AP, obviously Tis the Law, a couple others over our collector.
Well, so that 103 is going to actually be the best of anyone in the 3-year-old class right now that are considered Kentucky Derby contenders. And I mean, a 103 was good enough to win the Kentucky Derby, the last 4 years. I mean, Justify had a 103, Nyquist had a 103, but you're definitely beating Country House. We've got a 99. You're going to beat, Always Dreaming had a 102. There's a lot of potential here, but in recent memory, the only horse to come out of the Bluegrass and really make a strong for the Kentucky Derby is Good Magic. I don't see Good Magic quality here, but I wanted to go through a fun little exercise before we talk about the rest of the race here. We'll look at some of the other horses that are points-wise going to be considered part of this, and I wanted to just get an idea for where you think Art Collector ranks among these, because I think we're both in agreement that there's really only one true Kentucky Derby contender or threat to come out of the Bluegrass here. Am I right?
To win the race, yes.
That's what I mean. Okay, so we're both going to agree he's not ahead of Tis the Law or Honor AP, right?
Correct.
All right. Authentic. Is Art Collector ahead or behind Authentic?
I'll take Authentic. That's
Dr.
close,
Post.
though. I'll take Dr. Post. That's not close.
Uncle Chuck.
I'll take Uncle Chuck. That's not close.
Cezanne.
I'll take Cezanne. That's very close.
King Guillermo.
I'll probably take Art Collector.
Max Player.
Probably take Art Collector.
Creed, Enforceable, Pneumatic, Sole Volante, Basin. Any of those horses?
Man, probably not. I mean, Sole Volante, to win, no, probably not. I mean, that's the key. If it's to win, then no. If we're talking about where I think they'll finish, there's a couple in there that I think could create some trouble. The Derby is really interesting, and if our collector doesn't bring the A game, he could end up finishing 8th or 9th because he's going to be closer to the lead. But I would say to win, there's no one on that list I'd take over him.
So where it stands right now is that I listed 5 horses that you said you would take above, and the rest you took Art Collector over, which goes with what you said. He's in the top 10, not in your top 5. So that sharp turn of foot, he likes to sit up close to the pace here. He has the kind of style that will get a horse a great chance in the Kentucky Derby. I'm really impressed with the way that he's been brought along. I mean, he transfers to the new barn after he was with Joe Sharp. He was one of the many Joe Sharp horses who got tagged for a positive drug test. The owner said, we're not dealing with that BS. They pulled him away, put him with Tom Drury Jr., who on our live show on Saturday, Aaron talked about is a very talented but not well-known trainer, mostly in the claiming ranks in Kentucky. So for him to now have this as a Kentucky Derby contender and a real strong, legitimate threat, it's got to be exciting for his connections.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And he's done a wonderful job with this horse since getting it from the Joe Sharp barn. I think that what Aaron said was important on that live feed. Look, this isn't Drury's, first rodeo. He's been around for a long time and mainly at the lower claiming level tracks. And so because of that, he's not necessarily a public name. I'm not going to say that's a reason to knock him, but it's definitely something where you have to kind of take a little bit of a step back, right? Because there are bigger stages, and people you tend to overthink things when you're doing the biggest when you have the biggest moment in your life. And I'm not saying that he will overthink it, but I'm saying that you tend to do it, and so it's something you have to at least keep in the back of your mind. So I don't see that as a concern, but it's definitely, Art Sherman won the Derby, and he's not someone who was necessarily did like the Bob Bafferts of the world before it either. So there are definitely examples where you can point to. I don't think it's a big issue that Drury trains him, although you may get a little bit better of a price on him. But after this effort, I'm not sure that you will, especially since he beat Shared Sense last time out, who turned back to win. My biggest concern with Art Collector, and I'm going to hammer this home, is that Shared Science is probably the best horse he's beaten. And they also debuted this horse on turf. And we often talk about, trusting the trainer. The trainer knows more than you do. If Joe Sharp thinks this is a better turf horse than a dirt horse, I would tend to believe that Joe Sharp is usually going to be correct about that. Now, obviously, there are times where he's wrong, and this is one of those where this horse seems to be flourishing on the dirt. And maybe there's just a ton of talent on both surfaces. We don't really know. But there's enough about our collector that's kind of one of those, I don't know, that makes me not want to take a price that I think he's going to end up being on Derby Day. I mean, that's the other big part of this for me, right? I'm probably not going to use our collector on Derby Day, because our collector is probably going to be the second or third choice, and I don't think that he should be. I don't want our collector at sub 10 to 15 to 1 in that race.
Wow. So assuming they're all healthy, and God willing they will be, Tiz the Law, Honor AP, probably top 2 choices. It'd be interesting to see what you get from Uncle Chuck in the Traverse, assuming he goes there. Yeah, I mean, if Authentic goes and wins the Haskell this coming weekend, I mean, I think that's going to benefit both you and I, because we're on record as saying we don't want him for the Kentucky Derby. So I think as much as we want Dr. Post to win it for our fantasy league, it'd be kind of nice if you got to see Authentic win in the Haskell, because that's going to help the price as well. You know, a lot of the Bob Baffert casual fans going that way.
And the My Racehorse fans. Yeah, I mean, right now, if I could, I think it's going to be interesting what Honor AP ends up going off at in the Derby. I think he's going to be the forgotten horse in the windows. Because you have our collector who's kind of run a big race on a big stage right before the Derby. Uncle Chuck is going to run in the Travers, where if he wins, he's going to take a ton of money, and you're going to see the same thing from Tiz the Law. I mean, Tiz the Law should be the favorite unless Uncle Chuck beats him in the Travers, and then maybe you flip those two, but they're probably 1-2. And I think Honor AP is going to be forgotten a little bit at the windows. I mean, right now, if the Derby was next weekend, I would only be playing 3 horses. I'd only be playing Uncle Chuck, Honor AP, and Tiz the Law.
I'm with you. Yeah, that all fits. If we're playing from what we've seen right now without any further progression from anyone, that's a good fit. Let's talk about Swiss Skydiver just for a quick second. The decision to run here instead of in the Ashland, go after the boys, see if you can get the win and go for the Kentucky Derby. See if the distance, if she can handle that. I think we got the questions answered. I don't fault them at all for taking a shot. I think this was, other than winning, I think this was best case scenario. She's now graded stakes placed against the boys, which is going to be huge for her future broodmare prospects. Now you go back to face the fillies, which she can beat almost all of these fillies. You've been a little lukewarm on Swiss Skydiver. I know you didn't like her in this spot, but do you fault her connections at all for taking a shot? Do you think this was the right decision?
I would never tell someone not to take a swing. I mean, that's, why not? Certain horses are just once in a lifetime horses for certain owners and groups, and you might as well take a shot at it. I mean, in this funky year, if you got a horse you think you can make the Derby gate with, and you think it has a legit shot of winning, and you're already qualified for the Oaks, why not? Right? I mean, that's kind of my take on it. You're not losing anything by swinging here because you are already in the Oaks gate. So I don't mind it. I'm kind of surprised, to be honest, that they're not going to the Derby after this. That to me is more of the why did you do this? I'm kind of like, if you're going to run second and a good second, then why not go for it? I mean, anything can happen in a field of 20, and you're going to be near the lead or on the lead. You're going to be in a pretty good spot, all things considered. Why not take the swing at the Derby if you're going to take a swing here too? Now, I know obviously money comes into play, but I mean, after we saw what Speech did to Venetian Harbor, I mean, Speech and Swiss Skydiver are the same horse, and Guarana was, and we looked this up, was $1.50 favorite in that race. So she's second or third choice in the Oaks. And maybe at this point, take a swing. I mean, then we don't know who's going to be in the gate, obviously, but maybe we take a swing in the Derby in that case. I realize they're not going to, but I'm kind of surprised that after this race, their decision immediately is we're definitely going to the Oaks.
I wouldn't have hated to, and maybe that there's still, a month and a half to go before the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. Someone posted this in the comments on our live feed. Why not just enter both races? What if you get a really terrible draw in the Oaks, or, what if it turns out there's a super freak in the Oaks? What if there's, more attrition that happens to the 3-year-old male division, where you get in there, you get a nice middle spot. It looks like maybe there isn't a whole lot of pace. The worst thing is it's you scratch, and one of the also eligibles, which we always have for the Kentucky Derby, one of those horses gets in. You're telling me, by the way, if a month and a half from now, that there's a horse that's 21st, 22nd in points that's somehow better than Swiss Skydiver for chances of winning the Kentucky Derby, I don't think that's really possible. So I'm with you. Take the shot, but sorry, go ahead.
This year could be, because right now, Dr. Post has 20 points. That's like right on the cusp, right? And I think he has a better shot at winning the Derby, but we don't know where it's going to end up. I'm just saying, it's really funky because of how many points were given out this year. Even if you look like the fantasy point league scores, there's so many more points than other years because there's so many more races that are these qualifying things, and it's kind of crazy how that's led to a little bit more chaos when you're looking at who's going to be in the gate and how important those also eligibles and the scratches are going to be. And then you have horses, you have multiple Bafferts that are in the top 20 that are definitely not going to be in the gate. And so it's like, 25th might make the gate this year. It's crazy just with all the timeline and the points and defections. It's nutty.
Let's talk about Rushy real quick. This was a horse that I liked. I talked about on the live feed. I thought at a price, this is where I was going. Thank you to TVG for the $10 win insurance bet because he finished third. Somehow he finished
Got that
third.
Photo.
I thought for sure he was in fifth at the wire.
I did
and
too.
I lost that all important $10. But he barely edges out Enforceable. It was a good effort. I think we're seeing this is a 1.1 miles might be too far. Cut him back to a mile and a 16th, especially in California. You can cash a lot of good checks in a weaker California range there. What did you think about Rushy?
Yeah, Rushy is one of those when we get back to what we're good at horses. It was cool to see him try to do this, but he's now lost to the cream of the crop. To be honest, like he's lost to some darn good horses, so you can't really knock him for like. I'll pull him up real quick. Honor AP, Authentic, Charlatan, and 1,000 Words are the horses that have won the races that he's lost, and 1,000 Words was in his maiden loss at Santa Anita in October. So pretty darn good horses that he's been beaten by, and now we can add. I guess Swiss Skydiver beat him here, as well as our collector to that list. But this horse probably doesn't, like you said, want this 1.8 mile distance. The mile races that he ran at Santa Anita were very, very good. And yes, he lost to Charlatan in one of those races, but let me tell you, everyone was losing to Charlatan in that race, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So I think that Rushy, when cutting back, is going to be nice. I was a little disappointed in this effort. I thought Rushy had a legit shot at winning this race, and just turning for home did not have the class to stay with the top two.
How about our boy Enforceable? He's on our fantasy league team. We've liked him. His biggest detriment is that he's a one-run dead closer, and you get him a long stretch like he had at Fairgrounds, and you saw it worked. He won the Lecomte. He was second in the Risen Star. A little bit of traffic trouble in the Louisiana Derby. That was also a hard track to make up ground. You can go back and listen to our old shows where we talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
This is his first start since March, so he's got almost 4 months of rust to kick off a little bit here. And Mark Casse was very positive after the race, saying, I told the owner, just let him show some good energy in the stretch. I know he needs a race off. And it's like, we weren't betting him. We weren't lauding him on the show as anything more than underneath horse anyway, but you couldn't have dropped that line a little bit before so the bettors knew. Whatever. I thought it was a good run from Enforceable, a good start back. He's going to need to do more, and I don't think he's a Kentucky Derby win candidate, but if he can just, get one more start before the Derby, he's got, a month and a half. Yeah, we might see him one more time before the Derby, and then you enter him there. Good underneath candidate still for the Derby? You still feel that way about Enforceable?
Yeah, and Enforceable, honestly, is one of those that I could make a wild case to win. I wouldn't use him today, but if the race set up properly and the track was playing right, he is a candidate to win the race. Keeneland was playing to favor or playing to speed all weekend. It was tough to pass anyone Friday or Saturday. So for him to come from way back and be able to make a run, especially first off a layoff, is solid. I'd expect we don't see him again till the Derby. There's not really anywhere to run him that makes sense. And I don't see him wheeling back quickly after this long of a layoff. So I think that you're probably going to see him in the Derby next. And I think that if you get anywhere from 20 to 25 to 1, this is a must-use, like, underneath horse. A must-use, like, you always see, and we always talk about in Still Regarded this horse, you always see that one horse that just slops up the fourth spot in the Super, and man, it 61 to 1 in Still Regard or whatever it was, makes that thing pay stacks. And I think that Enforceable has a legit shot at that. And I think he'll get ignored in a lot of pools because he's just not sexy if you look at it, his running lines. But man, every time he's ready, he runs, and if the track is playing fair, he's in the race.
Yeah, I don't have many. I never really dabble in future bets, but I think I had a good day at the track and during the last pool, so I just put a little bit of money down. I put Tis the Law and Honor AP in first, and I put Enforceable dead in second. So we'll see what happens. If that thing hits, man, and even I know there's the whole argument about futures. If that thing hits, that's going to be nice. Even for the small amount I played, that'll be a nice exacta.
I'm a proponent of futures in some cases. I've got some Derby futures, so I do like specific races. If you think you can get ahead of the curve, I have Dr. Post at 88 to 1, I think it is. So there are definitely times where I think futures make sense, and if you like a couple horses on top, you want to peg an exacta, that's definitely one of them, because I think exacta pools get misbet more than the win pools get misbet in that spot.
Drury said after the race that I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Christopher Potts just brought something up about the track records at Keeneland all weekend. Yeah, that track was playing lightning fast, and that made it even harder for closers. The turf course especially was just wicked fast. I think it was the last race on Sunday. They set the track record at 1 mile and 3/16 for like mid-level allowance horses, set the track record by over a second, and it just all day it was a little crazy. I think who else set the track record by over a second when we were on? Someone did it. So you just had track.
Was the speech?
No,
Rushing Fall.
It might have been Rushing Fall. I think it was on turf. You just had records that were falling left, right, and center over at Keeneland, and it's interesting because we don't really have any precedent. We've never had Keeneland run in early July, so we have absolutely no idea how fast this track normally is in early July. So it's definitely faster than the spring or the fall. I can tell you that much. But if you look at this, is one thing I think is very important if you're going to play the Breeders' Cup. Do not take these races too seriously this specific weekend. If a horse ran really well at Keeneland in the fall meet before and struggled this meet in the summer, trust the fall meet, not this summer meet, because the conditions will be similar to when those races were run versus this is a very different condition that you see in Kentucky.
That's a really excellent point because, and my guess, I feel the same way, is that you have so much more moisture in the spring and in the fall in Kentucky than you do in the summer. I know there was a little bit of rain, but it's not anything like they've had,
Zero races were rained off the turf the entire meet.
Well, I mean, it was only got to be a Keeneland record, right?
Yeah, but still, I mean,
yeah. So that is important, and it's interesting because this is, if you didn't know, this is where the Breeders' Cup is going to be held. So it's an interesting point to make. We'll move on to a race that I think is going to have Breeders' Cup implications. The race prior, race 8 on Saturday at Keeneland, the Coolmore Jenny Wiley Stakes, Grade 1, $350,000 purse. Fillies and Mares going 1 mile and a 16th on the turf. And a Rushing Fall, 4-5 favorite, like Mike said, she was the favorite. You knew everybody was going to play her like that. God damn, I love this horse. I absolutely. If you missed the live stream, I love this horse.
Mrs. Magic actually text me and asked me if she should be worried. Not even kidding.
Rushing Fall, just so great. She did what she was supposed to. She's now 4 for 5 or 5 for 6 at Keeneland. I'll have to go back and double check. She loves Keeneland. She loves this turf course. It doesn't matter if it's soft, if it's yielding, if it's good, if it's firm. She loves it. So she ran a great race.
Mm-hmm.
Jolie Olympica. This was one that really surprised all of us on the live stream because she was acting like a damn fool in the paddock, wouldn't settle down, wouldn't relax. Now she's going 2 turns, which is she hasn't passed a 2-turn test yet in her life. Boy, I thought that was a pretty damn impressive effort for her. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, so Rushing Fall, 5 for 6, 4 for 5 at the distance, 5 for 6 at Keeneland. I was really impressed by both of them. This is another grain of salt race for me, though. I'm wondering if the lightning fast turf course really favored Jolie Olympica in this spot. And that was one of the reasons why she was able, or Jolie Olympica in this spot, and that was one of the reasons why she was able to kind of stretch out and get the distance. And it's not that I don't think she can run successful races at 1 mile or 1 mile and 16th. I just think 5.5 furlongs is a better distance for her. And I don't know if Rushing Fall was necessarily all out in this spot. It looked like Rushing Fall got by and then just kind of had her measured and didn't really need to open up. And so I'm wondering if the turf course helped get the distance for Jolie Olympica. I mean, I know that they were talking about stretching her out to 2 turns out in California. I mean, so do you want to talk a little about what you heard there and kind of what you thought of the effort? And if this is mile 16 thing is what we're doing in the future as well?
Well, sure. So before her North American debut, there was a lot of hype that this could be Mandela's next superstar, and before she was going to debut sprinting, and he said, "No, I think she's going to be 2 turns," and she won. Was so fast in her debut that she set the Santa Anita track record for the distance, and then tried 2 turns, got caught late, gave a good account of herself. I think they're just going to keep pushing for that because. With Del Mar, it's only 5 furlongs is the most they can do for their turf course. And we talked about it on our live show. She's not known for coming out of her races that strong. It takes her a while to get back, get the weight back up, and she's a smaller frame filly. So Mandela's trying to take her time with her. If you're looking for her next race, we talked it could be the Breeders' Cup. And if that's the case, I'm with you. I think you definitely go turf sprint with her because she is so fast, and she did beat Alexandra going 5.5 furlongs on
without
turf.
Trying.
And Alexandra would be my pick, right? If she hadn't gotten hurt, Alexandra might be my pick to win everything. And the nice thing about her running style, Jolie Olympica, is she's on the front. So unlike Alexandra, where you got to worry, is she going to be able to do this in the stretch against 13 other horses? Jolie Olympica's Just go.
Yeah.
Just go, and you've got this. Especially if Pure Sensation doesn't show up, she's got that in the bag.
Well, and she has the ability to stalk too. I mean, she rated
Yeah.
in her 5.5 win at Santa Anita last time out, and she sat right behind the speed and then almost effortlessly won and held off Alexandra. I mean, that's another one where she just looked measured. She didn't really look like she was firing through, you know? So I really was impressed with her. And I think that I'm really impressed with her sprinting. I want her to go back to sprinting. I really hope we don't see her try and, you know, maybe the Breeders' Cup Mile is where she ends up running. Maybe you could make an argument that on turf is what she wants, especially if it's firm. But I wouldn't be shocked if she's cross-entered, to be honest with you, just to kind of see what the turf course plays and who shows up before they make a decision with her. I'm still not going to be done with Juliet Foxtrot. I talked about this horse quite a bit on the live stream. I think this horse is still really interesting. This horse was only beat by Got Stormy, Dadgy the Legend, and Uni and Vasilika last year. That was it. That's the list in 2019.
All really damn good horses to get
really
beat by.
damn good. Yeah. And she just missed going a mile to Uni and Got Stormy. I mean, you know, she's a couple lengths back, but she actually made the lead in the stretch against both of those horses. So I am not ready to give up on her. And if I keep getting prices like we were, I'm going to keep using Juliet Foxtrot, even if we're facing horses like Rushing Fall, because I mean, this horse who was running low 100 buyers in the late 4-year-old season really should be able to, you should see one more little notch up. And Brad Cox is a damn good trainer on the turf. So I would not throw out Juliet Foxtrot next time out. And I would almost tag her a little bit. I think this turf course might have been a little too firm for her. And she just wasn't able to make up the ground in the stretch. She had a little bit of trouble, but not enough to actually make an excuse out of it. Because when the running time came, she did get out and was able to kind of make us charge, but just not get up there. So I would tag her up and I'd be using her next time out.
Definitely. And it'll be her third start off of a very long layoff when she shows up too, which is oftentimes when you see a horse peak. So good thing to keep in mind. We'll talk about the 7th race at Keeneland now. The grade 1 $400,000 Central Bank Ashland Stakes is a Kentucky Oaks prep race, 140-20-10 to the top 4 finishers. Venetian Harbor was in here and she was expected to be the lone speed without Swiss Skydiver. A lot of people thought she was a very clear single. She was bet down to the 3-5 favorite. But, Mike, I think we've officially learned that anything beyond a mile for Venetian Harbor just isn't going to cut it because Speech went right past her and Venetian Harbor dropped anchor hard. Still gets second, but Speech really ran away with that one. I thought that was a great effort from Speech. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say mile 16th is out of her range. I'm just going to say she's not the best horse in mile 16th. I mean, she did beat She Dares, or what is it? She Dares the Devil. Yeah, there it is. It's really italicized and short-handed. She beat She Dares the Devil, who came back and was super impressive at Indiana. So, and that was going a mile 16th. So I'm not going to say she's lost now to Swiss Skydiver in Speech at a mile 16. So I don't think we can quite say that she can't get the distance. I was impressed that Speech had this in her. Like, I did not expect Speech to be able to take this big of a step up. And you know, she ran well going a mile 16th facing Gamine at Oaklawn. And she was only 3.8 to 1 that day. So she was bet pretty good by the betting public as well. And Pratt took them out next time. I thought Ricky brought up a great point, and kind of maybe it's Castellano is the reason this horse kind of stepped up, because this is the second time that Castellano has ridden Speech, and she's run her 2 best career races in those races. So maybe in this case, Castellano's style and how he treats a horse is really how Speech wants to be treated. It's what she's receptive to. And maybe that's a combination you got to pay attention to moving forward. This is a horse that likes to run second, though. So from a betting perspective, I will probably not be playing Speech next time out. I mean, the other thing we have to talk about is this was a 6-horse field. There was one speed horse. Speech was
5
the one.
horses once 12
field.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're right. 5-horse field.
That's a horse I forgot.
Yeah, well, you were trying to scratch Speech in the entire pre-race part. And I wish you were right, man. I wish she wasn't in here. I would have had to pick 5 for like 250 on the Sama bombs without her. But it was one of those where I just don't think that, you know, that I'm willing to take a short price on Speech in a larger field when there's more pace pressure. I mean, she sat the perfect trip behind Venetian Harbor. If Venetian Harbor stops at all, she's be able to go right by, and no one's coming from the back. So, yeah, I mean, we'll say I'm lukewarm on Speech, but I mean, these fillies are tough. I mean, they kind of trade places, and you saw Spice's Nice ran real well at Belmont, and you had Speech obviously win this race, and Swiss Skydiver and Speech both have now beaten Venetian Harbor by the same distance, and then there's Gamine who's right there. I mean, you've got 3 or 4 horses that are all tradable. I will tell you this, like looking at the futures market, Gamine at 3 to 5, 3 to 2 seems nutty. Like I get that she's for the Breeders' Cup right now, or the Kentucky Oaks. I get that she's the best horse in the class, but 3 to 2 seems crazy.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, that's based off of that one super freak performance in the Acorn, which was a
super freak performance. Yeah.
Yes. But at the same time, that was going a 1-turn mile, and I'm glad you brought her up, because Bob Baffert keeps saying he's going to send her to the test for her next start. Like, that's going to be her Kentucky Oaks prep.
7
It's another
furlongs.
one-turn race. It's 7 furlongs. And you're like,
Yep.
well, it's a grade 1 at Saratoga, sure, but for a horse that you're trying to send to, the Kentucky Oaks will be the longest race of her life. And it's one thing when you're talking about that with the Derby and the boys, but with the girls, it's like you couldn't even push her to a mile on the 16th as a final prep. Like, you gotta wonder, with all that speed that she has, is he gonna be able to get her to calm down training wise in time to be able to handle it? So I'd be curious what happens with her moving forward.
Well, and now you also have you're gonna have Gamine face Swiss Skydiver. You're gonna have Gamine face Venetian Harbor for the first time. Those are speed horses. I mean, she's been out on the lead by herself every chance, and so that will not be the case in the Kentucky Oaks. She's gonna go 2 turns for the first time, going the longest distance of her life with pressure. So it'll be interesting to see how she responds to that, and if she just, literally burns out the field, or if she's the one that's burning out down the lane.
What happened? I gotta talk about this. What happened with Bonnie South, man? This is a horse that Aaron loved, Jared loved. You guys were all talking her up. I didn't think she had, the best chance. I was very big on Venetian Harbor, so I was wrong there. But Bonnie South, man, didn't run a lick. What happened there?
I'm not sure. I mean, she was the clear, in my mind, second choice here. I was anti-speech, obviously, and so, but the race that she ran, both the last 2 races, really, both of her 2 starts as a 3-year-old were really good, and they were coming from way back off the pace, beating fairly good horses. I mean, again, She Dares the Devil. She beat her at a mile and 16th, just like Venetian Harbor did, and this was one of those the whisper horses. Like as a 2-year-old, everyone was saying this horse was going to be a very, very good horse. Early in the 3-year-old season, everyone was saying this is going to be a very, very good horse. And this was a unique spot to put this horse in. I mean, it was a step up in class, and it was the time when they kind of believed that this horse fit. And when I say they, I mean Brad Cox and the connections. And it didn't. I think that's really the most simple way to put it. I also, again, the track probably didn't play very favorably to this horse, who was trying to come from way off the pace. And Venetian Harbor was riding a comfortable lead, and Speech was riding a very comfortable flanking trip. I mean, it would have been very tough to get by both of those horses based on the way that the trip kind of panned out. She's a horse that would generally benefit from having larger fields, because you're going to have more pace pressure up front. You're going to have horses, Speech would have been in the middle if there were 3 horses that were pressing the pace there, versus having just that clean, comfortable flanking trip. And that puts more pressure on her. And when you're trying to close ground late, you want pressure up front. You want horses not to be comfortable. And in this case, the front 2 horses were extremely comfortable the entire time around the backstretch and around the turn.
101 buyer for Speech is a career best. And like Mike said, her 2 career best efforts with Castellano in the saddle. So, whether she makes one more start before the Kentucky Oaks, or if they send her straight to Churchill Downs after this effort, I think you can probably expect to see Mr. Castellano in those irons, and we'll wish them all luck. We'll move on to the 6th race at Keeneland on Saturday, the Grade 2 $150,000 Shakertown Stakes.
Yeah, baby.
Boy, this was a hot mess of a race, and for us in kind of the best way, because Leinster gets it done just barely over Totally Boss. I was big on Bound for Nowhere. I still can't believe he got caught. I thought he ran really well. Those top 3 really strong efforts, separated by about a nose and a head there. What'd you think about it all?
I love turf sprinting, man. I
it's so fun.
I keep stats on what I'm good at, and turf sprinting is by far my best thing. I'm going to start leaning on turf sprints more. Leinster was top pick. Totally Boss was the second pick. We had the Ice Cold Exacta there, which was kind of nice, which is crazy in that 13-horse field. And it was nice to get Leinster home at 10-1. It was the start of a bunch of tournaments, so it was nice to get that off on a good field. And Leinster was actually the one who broke the track record by, I believe it was the second. And Christopher Potts letting us know that Totally Boss, who ran second, also broke the track record, which is crazy.
That's how fast this turf course was.
It was lightning quick. And you know what? This race was an awesome race. I couldn't believe you're getting 10-1 on Leinster. I mean, this is a great example about people just looking at the most recent race and just being like, oh, well, I can't bet that horse then. But if you go back and you look at this Leinster, and this is kind of why I think it's important to go back and look after races, that allowance race, that was just a prep. And the horse goes off at 4-1, gets beat by Extravagant Kid, but it's clearly better than Extravagant Kid. If you go back and watch what the horse did last year, the win that this horse had in the Troy was electric, when it ran a 109 and was able to beat Disco Partner and Pure Sensation. It came back and it lost to Totally Boss and Smart Remark in a race where it was close until the final half furlong. Horse didn't want to go six furlongs. Gets back to 5.5, just misses to Stubbins, goes 5, which was probably a little bit too short. And then runs out in 5 to start us out there too. And then you come back here and we get that 5.5 furlong distance back. This is what this horse wants to be doing. If you just look at the past performances, you can kind of quickly get to that. And I'm not sure if there's a better horse at 5.5 right now. And somehow we're getting 10-1 on Leinster. I was very happy when that price held up. I was expecting that thing to get bet down pretty good. But there are so many directions you can go in these turf sprints. I mean, that's the thing. It's very, very tough to be overly confident. I know, in the Sama Bombs, I went 6 deep in my 50-cent ticket. I had a $5 ticket where I only used the 10 and the 13, but I went 6 deep in the 50-cent ticket. So it's one of those races. It's a lot of fun. These are great price races because so much havoc happens that it can be, you like having that speed because, man, it's nice to have to be up front, but there's so much speed in these races. You really know who the speed of the speed is,
right? Which
can make it very hard to handicap speed alone. And then you have these really ultra talented horses running home like bullets in these last half furlongs.
Well, and I want to talk a little bit more about the Leinster's debut because he was up against Karatari as a talented turf sprinter. Bulletin, Wilbo, Totally Boss, Extravagant Kid got the win there. There were a lot of good horses, a pretty salty allowance race. And this being his second start off the layoff, you would expect the Leinster is going to improve. Rusty Arnold is only 2 for 18 off of a kind of a layoff of what he was doing the first back. But when he goes to second off, it jumps up to 20%. So there's basically his chances of winning double there. And then getting back to what you said, he loves the distance and the Troy Stakes at Saratoga last year. He set the track record there. So this horse now owns 2 track records turf sprinting. You can argue about whether two very big tracks. It's not like this isn't Fawner and Grants Pass. This is Saratoga and Keeneland that he's knocking these off at. He got that big win at Keeneland last April in 2019. He got the Woodford Stakes. He missed to Stubbins by 3/4 of a length. This horse loves Keeneland. And one thing that I remembered is that about Keeneland and Del Mar, horse for course is an angle. That's a really strong angle with those 2 tracks. It helped me with Del Mar betting. And if you were like Mike and you were big on Leinster, that really helped you here. So now let's look forward to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. It's going to be held at Keeneland, 5.5 furlongs. It's his favorite track and his favorite distance. You're not going to get this kind of price on him, but without knowing who's in the field, he's probably going to make your ticket, right?
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely be using Leinster. I think Leinster is probably your best turf sprinter in the world right now. So he is
better than Jolie Olympica.
Yes, at 5.5. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I would take Leinster over anybody. I said it last year too. I mean, I liked Leinster. I didn't like Leinster that much because it was 5 furlongs, but the 5.5 is a key part of it. And I was one of the people who, I played him in the Troy. I played him back in the Woodford. I mean, I'll be consistently playing this horse at 5.5. Honestly, if they can just run this race back, I'd be happy, man. I like Totally Boss is a really good horse. I love seeing that horse in there. I think we're going to see him again. Texas Wedge. I like Texas Wedge in this spot. Fast Boat. I didn't even use Bound for Nowhere. That's how deep this race was. I went 6 deep and didn't use Bound for Nowhere.
Wow.
Which is kind of crazy because like the other horse I thought got a little left behind. And this is one that I'm probably going to put on some later tickets is Real News. The 3 horse who was the favorite in that allowance against Extravagant Kid, Leinster, and Totally Boss. And this was the second out of a 4-year-old season from a son of the Factor. That horse is going to keep taking steps forward. And if that horse has a big race, I mean, watch out. And that one was 23-1 in this race after being the 3-1 favorite against Leinster and was the favorite over Fast Boat the race before that. I mean, keep an eye on Real News, stable it up. If you get a price, fire back on that one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see which of these horses go off to Saratoga. And we could have a showdown with a lot of this field in the Troy. And I mean, post position becomes a big factor. Who's, where they're at in their form cycles becomes a big factor. I'm with you, man. The turf sprints, I don't think I breathe an entire second that they run. So it's kind of good that they're short, but man, they're so exciting.
That's like a pool length swim. That 50-second, 56 or 56 to 100-second hold your breath. That's impressive. Dennis is talking trash, saying Leinster isn't the best 5.5 furlong turf sprinter. I'd love to know who is then. Tell me who you got right now over him.
I mean, it can't be Alexandra. She's hurt.
No.
Well, and that 5.5, I don't.
That's a key.
That's a little short for Ole. She needs a good strong 6.
She likes a little more room to close.
Let's talk about Del Mar real quick, Mike. There weren't any big stakes action happening, just some minor stakes here. Tis a Magician on Friday in the stakes race. Let's just say that jockey's never coming back aboard again.
It was rough.
It was pretty bad. Overall, what were your takeaways from Del Mar? We had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, lots of great racing, great prices that we talked about. Where did you get a feel for how the dirt and the turf are playing? Yeah,
so I usually expect the turf to be a little more closer happy early in the meet, and then it firms up as you kind of run over it. And usually the dirt, I want to have the horses up front. I did not want the leader in the dirt races by Sunday, man. It looked like no one was able to take Fields Gate to wire. You didn't necessarily need to be coming from the clouds, but you definitely didn't want to be in first. It seemed like the horses that were sitting between, 3 and 4 lengths back were the ones who were really making the move, except for the 2-year-olds. The 2-year-olds, you consistently saw the horses up front winning, but that's generally the 2-year-old thing. I mean, it's not no surprise there. And it's also a shorter race. But man, I was surprised to how well horses closed ground at Del Mar on the dirt track. That's just not something that I expect in California tracks. And I think I generally will be a speed capper when we're looking at somewhere like Del Mar, especially early in the season. And it was the opposite of that. Yeah,
and I thought that they did a 180 from how the form played at Santa Anita, where Santa Anita you needed to be on or very close to the lead on dirt, and you could unless you were lone speed, you can be 20 lengths back on the turf and still close well. And man, it was crazy how many horses struggled to close. I mean, good horses, quality closing horses were struggling to close on that turf course. There were only 1 or 2 times when it happened, and I actually want to give a shout out to Drayden Van Dyke, because the way he rode in the final race Sunday on a horse named Ostini at 10-1, I didn't play that horse because on paper this was going to be an early pace horse, and I thought there was too much speed. I wanted somebody sitting right behind. Horse was dead last. He got pinched a little bit at the start, but Drayden didn't rush the horse up. I wrote it all off, and then that was one of the few horses we saw close and do a great job. But again, that came at the very end of almost 30 races, probably 12 or so were on the turf. So it's crazy how that happened. Did you find yourself adjusting your play for Sunday after the first 2 days? Because I definitely did.
Oh yeah, I mean the last race on Saturday, I want to say there were 3 horses that were turf sprinters stretching out that all somehow got a mile.
Yep.
And that to me was the moment where, and we covered that race for the Magic Mike Pick 4, and I think I had the 1, and then it was 6 and the 7. You had the 6. I don't think either of us used the 7, and the 6 won. Good job, Magic. Good job by you. But all 3 of them held on and ran really fast fractions early, and it really seemed like it was going to set up for a closer, and it just didn't. And then the other thing is the race that we specifically talked about on the podcast, and I'm chucking all of the speed, because there's so much speed. They went 21 and change, 45 and change, and it went speed in the first 2 spots. The closers just couldn't make up any ground late, and there were 3 closers who were all, very good closers. We're talking about stakes level closers. They're getting a hot pace to run into that couldn't even hit the exacta. I mean, it's just like, okay, like I don't beat your head against the wall. Just stop firing on the dead closers. You can play the stalkers. Those are good fits. And I thought that, we saw. Well, one of the things I think we also have to talk about is the jockeys that are not going to be at Del Mar now.
That's a good point.
Because I think that's going to definitely show you how good Abel Cedillo is. I think that Hernandez really gets another bump up. We talked about Drayden Ruffles Van Dyke and the chip that he's got on his shoulder, and how well I think he's going to ride for this meet. I mean, there's a couple in that colony now that you have to really take a big time step up and say that they may dominate Del Mar. I mean, Cedillo specifically, he could have a meet. I'm just saying right now, he's been riding lights out, and Rispoli could too. But Cedillo, I think is more under the radar. I think people are playing Rispoli like he's Pratt now in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Cedillo gets that same credit on the turf that he should. And he is deadly on both surfaces. And some of the rides he had to sit in the pocket trip and wheel 3 wide or 2 wide or stay on the inside and make the right decision every time this first weekend was really impressive.
Yeah, Abel had an amazing ride, a picture-perfect ride. Go back and watch Carpe Venum. Is it my racehorse horse? Almost made that the best thing I saw. I thought it was so impressive how she ran her ass off. She ran beautifully, but Abel rode her absolutely perfectly. So go back. I want to say it was the 3rd or 4th race on Sunday at Del Mar. Just so perfect the way he was riding.
It was the 7th. I think
it was the 7th.
I think so, because it was a stakes race. I also had it in tournaments.
No, she wasn't a stakes race.
No,
she wasn't in the stakes. You look it up real quick, because I want to give a shout out to Sean Alvarez, who writes for the site. Is a good friend of ours. Sean has a small piece of Carpe Venum. He and I were talking about this, about how Abel Cedillo is so talented with. It doesn't matter what kind of a horse you give him. He can ride a front end horse. He can ride a stalker. He can ride a closer. And it's a big reason why he and I were excited that Juan Hernandez moved his tack down to SoCal, because we both felt he's kind of the same. Cut from the same cloth.
Yep.
And with Abel, with Rispoli, with Drayden, hopefully going to have a better meet here than he did at Santa Anita, and Ruben Fuentes, you're going to forget a little bit about Juan Hernandez. And he also brought Ricky Gonzalez with him from Golden Gate, who's another talented jockey. The 2 of them are sneaky. If you see those guys show up on a horse and you're like, well, I kind of like the horse, I don't know about the jockey. If it's Juan Hernandez or Ricky Gonzalez and you're feeling that way, play him. Just trust me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like you see Hernandez as a 30% clip as a jockey, and yet you don't see him like so. So some people hopefully will see that and kind of make them think twice and not, and will still use the horse. Well, hopefully they don't, because then I can bet them. It was the eighth race. Yeah, it was the eighth race. So I was one race off.
Okay.
Yeah, and the move was able to beat California Cook and Red Lark, who both Red Lark was coming from further back. California Cook was closer to the pace, and Carpe Venom just looked very, very good doing it coming out of the China Doll. That's a horse you definitely have to kind of keep an eye on. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Carpe Venom now go somewhere in the Breeders' Cup in the what is it? There's 3-0 filly race out there, right?
No,
Going distance. No, she has to face older. Yeah, no, there's no 301. She's got to face older, so that's gonna be tough. That'll be tough. Never mind. She'll go to stakes races next. But
give her a small stakes race first.
It was a very impressive performance. If she got to face just 3-year-olds, I'd be really interested in taking her in the Breeders' Cup.
It was so impressive. Mike's already trying to put her in the
winner's circle. I'm trying to get Sean in the winner's circle in the Breeders' Cup. What can I say?
All right, that's going to wrap things up. Thanks so much for going through the weekend that was with Mike and I. Hopefully, you were able to learn some stuff and give a little bit of insight into how the horses were doing at Keeneland, what to think about all those track records we saw, and how to play Del Mar moving forward. If you're watching live on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Twitter, thanks so much. Stick around. We're going to wrap up the show, and then we'll answer a couple of quick questions before we sign off for the day. You got the Haskell Stakes coming up this weekend. Is the biggest weekend of the year at Monmouth Park. 6 stakes races. We're going to have an inside track to the Haskell wagering guide available at racenews.com. Mr. Samich, how are those bombs doing?
Oh, this weekend was frustrating. We gave out $7,000 in free tickets that won, like in the grid, and then we cashed like $800 all weekend on the sound bombs, which sucked. I mean, it's one of those things too where we had multiple will pays of over $2,000, and so it's like, all right, let's just get one of those home. But it was awesome that the 2 grids we gave out for free on opening day at Del Mar and opening day at Keeneland both hit the early pick 5, so it was a great way to start out those meets. Hopefully everybody played along, cashed on those, and then this weekend is going to be, I don't even know what to do. I mean, do we go to Del Mar? Do we go to Saratoga? Do we go to what is it, Monmouth on Saturday? Like, man, it is tough to figure out which one of those 3 we're going to use. I don't know. I'm not putting out 3 on Saturday. I'll tell you that much. So, my last personal choice would be Monmouth. So I may not do Haskell. I may skip it because I feel like my edge is better elsewhere. And we just talked about how stakes races are not necessarily the cream of the crop.
It's not where the prices are coming in,
right? And I may kind of lean toward where I think the best card is, which is going to be either Del Mar or Saratoga in my mind, because I think there's going to be more playable favorites or more playable prices.
I think your chalkboard's got the answer. That's all I'm going to say.
It's the question really is, will there be a second track? I mean, that's the big question. Is it will we do Saratoga and Del Mar, or Saratoga and Monmouth, or just Saratoga? I mean, because we're all in on Saratoga this weekend. Who are we kidding?
For all the Saratoga information, make sure you're following us on Twitter. I am at Curtis Kellard. He is at SummerBomb18. Number 1, number 8. Corporate overlords are at racing_dudes. Like I said, if you're watching this show right now live, stick around real quick. We will continue with just a couple of quick questions before we sign off. Until then, this has been another episode of the Magic Mike Show. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Magic.
And I'm Mike.
We'll see you next time. Cool. All right. So we had a couple quick questions I'll throw up here. If you don't have time, let me know. But Nick had a couple of questions here at the beginning. First one, how do you handicap unraced 2-year-olds or older for that matter? I'll start. The reason I was able to get to that horse that won the opener Sunday was it was the jockey, the trainer. That's good stuff. That workout. I'm telling you the workout line on that one, and I'm not someone who looks at workouts. That's what got that one for me. But you're the more experienced here. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, jockey trainer combos, workout are all key for me as well. I am often looking for barns that are doing well for a specific meet or over a specific time period. I think that's a really good way to say it. The other thing is jockey changes are a big difference to me. So, like, for instance, when you talked about the race 1 at Del Mar, Eagle in the Sky, Cedillo opened up with that horse, rode that horse 3-1, ran second in that race, and then got off it to ride this Miller horse that we're talking about. That to me is a big jockey change. And I don't overplay jockey changes, but to me, if it's a 2-year-old race and you have one of the top jockeys moving from horse to horse, that's a huge lateral move. And it really shows you that Cedillo doesn't think that the 3 can get it done and expects something out of the 5. One way that I used to do this is I took the last 3 workouts and used 12s. So for a 5 furlong workout, that'd be a minute. And I give a plus or minus. So if they ran a 59-second workout, that's a -1. If it went 58, that's a -2. If it went around the dogs or out of a gate, that would be an additional minus. and then I would give them a plus minus total. You'd be shocked how well that works out long term if you want to just try and find like really.
I might have to steal that. That's really smart.
I did it. I would be sitting in the stands at Saratoga when I'm like 15, 16 years old, and I'd be sitting there just doing these and just checking the results versus it. And you get to some long shots that way. But yeah, it just 12 seconds is what a horse should train at in the morning. Mm-hmm. So if a horse is, a 101 would be a +1, right? 49 would be a +1. If they do it out of a gate, it's an even. And then just kind of take that back and I'll end up playing 2 or 3 of those. So every now and then I'll do that and just see if anything stands out that I wouldn't expect. And I just do it for the previous 3 workouts because I want more of a short-term result pattern.
This might be a question better for Saratoga Slim if we can ever get him back out of retirement again. It's not a great question for me anyway. How do you handicap for verticals? I know you mostly play horizontally, but what's the best method for choosing the horse that finishes 3rd or 4th? I look at horses that have a case of seconditis, thirditis, fourthitis. I look at the pace to see who's going to, is there going to be a chance for a meltdown? Who's going to come running late for the pieces? I don't like these bets. I listen to Slim.
For me, it's pace. If I think a horse, so I'll look at the leaders, and if I think the leaders are going to have pressure, I will look for closers to finish in these spots. And if I look for the leaders to not take as much pressure, I will either have them on top or I'll have the stalkers beating them, and then having them round out the 2nd and 3rd spots, and then maybe take a closer for 4th. I think it's a lot harder to handicap who's going to finish 4th in a race than who will win the 4th leg of a pick 4, just because there's so many funky things that can happen, and you don't always get 100% effort from jockeys coming down the lane, especially if they're 20 lengths back and they're trying to win a photo for 4th or 5th. Like there's just some things that bother me in that sense, and that's one of the main reasons I don't overbet these. But yeah, to me, it's all about the pace and looking at how the pace sets up and who's going to quit. I also will never bet a try or a super if I don't like at least one horse that's 10-1. I think that there's not enough value in those bets for the actual likelihood of hitting them if you don't veer from the public. So for me, if I don't have a horse over 10-1, I'm not going to play a try or a super. Unless I'm playing it straight at Los Al, which I do tonight.
Last question, then we'll sign off. Enola Gay, best final furlong so far of the year. I'd say best final 16th. Man, that half furlong in the Appalachian Stakes on Saturday, if you're not sure what we're talking about, she seemed like she was, probably destined for 2nd or 3rd behind Alms. And this was on the Keeneland turf course, which we just talked about was how speed favoring it was. That last surge, man, inside that 16th pole, it's like she just went, okay, now we go. And then got it right at the wire.
It didn't look like they quit either. Usually when you see that, it's the horses are coming back and then the horse is really closing. So I'm sure this is a little recency bias, but yeah, I'll go with Enola Gay as the best final, 16th of a mile so far. The thing is too, is it's funny, like the first 16th of that last furlong wasn't breathtaking. It really was like the last 100 yards when it's just like, oh, I'm going to gobble some ground up now. Nom, 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 nom. And boom, got right to the front.
Like literally out of nowhere. It was it. You were watching it. You went, how?
I talked about it on the live stream. That horse was being scrubbed on for 3 furlongs and didn't respond until the last 100 yards. Like, how did it know? How did it know? Like, it made no sense that horse was able to get up in that manner. But hey, what do I know, man? It was an incredible last 100 yards to get up. I hated it because I didn't have it. I had the 6, but that's beside the point.
That's okay. Tough beat. It was
still
great. Impressive. Yeah, very impressive, especially the way Keeneland was playing. I can't think of anything. I would say, you know what? Alexandra, her last race when she was at the Jaipur, that last furlong there because she was still in the parking lot.
I just got a text from Rushing Fall. Rushing Fall wants to know if Rushing Fall has anything to worry about now with Alexandra in your life.
Well, Alexander's on the sideline, baby. It's okay.
Yes,
He's still my number 1. That's all right.
All right. I'll send a hoof up print.
Let her know. Well, she's watching. She's watching. Yeah. She knows. Cool. All right. So that's it for the questions. Thanks to everybody who stuck around and watched. All 17 of you still watching there. We'll be back. We do this every Monday and Thursday, 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. So if you can join us, great. If not, catch us on the replay. That's about it. Anything you want to say goodbye to the folks? Or you just want me to ramble?
And I'm Mike.
We'll see you guys next time.
Later, everybody.